Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You all have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I am your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, for another incredible family and friends episode. Episode number 62. Episode number 63. Episode number 63. Fast approaching 100, fast approaching 1 million downloads. Today we have back in studio none other than the great AJ Barker. Our last episode went really good. A lot of people gave a lot of great feedback and enjoy AJ Barker's insight, really just how genuine and authentic he is and deep insight. We're always happy to have you back. Thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it. Our episodes are getting throttled on YouTube, we think, so make sure you be a force multiplier out there. Share the episode, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're going to do our job on this end to run a paid promotion on YouTube to see if paying to play gets you a little bit more leeway in the algorithm. Hopefully it will. I know people who have contrarian political views, such as PragerU and some of the stuff Victor Davis Hanson and others do, makes its way through the low-tier algorithm. I think that YouTube and big tech have sort of a tiered algorithmic, system. If you pay, they'll let you pay to get what you deem is the truth out. So we're going to do everything we can to continue to fight the algorithm on YouTube because that's where most of the people are. But on the audio platform, we're growing fast, continuing to grow pretty fast. And, we have our Rumble channel up. We have our BitChute up for backup in case anything goes very, very wrong with YouTube. And we also have everything backed up on band.video. Alex Jones and the InfoWars team was kind enough to let us use their servers to back up all of the podcasts, so that's great. You can find us on all the digital audio platforms, Apple, Amazon, Google, and Spotify. AJ Barker, back in the studio.
How we doing?
Good to have you.
Good to be back.
And you're now on summer vacation from your teaching job as a theology teacher.
Yep, theology teacher
at a Catholic school.
Yep.
We're proud to have you as a friend of the show, teaching the young people, and back in the studio. Now, over the last couple of weeks, you and I have gone back and forth a little bit, just corresponded a little bit about some of the things that were talked about on Jason. Fearless with Jason Whitlock. If you're not tuned in or subscribed to that show, you need to be. You probably are if you're here. A lot of my viewers found me through Jason, at least in the YouTube world. But if you're not subscribed to Fearless with Jason Whitlock, you should be. Well, recently he interviewed presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, and AJ and I just, what do you want to say? We
had a series of conversations.
We had a series of conversations looking back at his interview and then my responses and just kind of the general lay of the land politically when it comes to some of these presidential candidates, but mainly Vivek himself. And AJ had some interesting thoughts about it, so I wanted to invite you on to get your take on it.
Yeah, tee it up from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first thing I said to you actually when we listened back to that the Jason Whitlock one, the Fearless, you guys are talking about him, and it was more, I think Jason, maybe TJ Moe was in that one.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking about him referring to moral authority as like his own moral authority. And that was definitely an error. That's not what Vivek Ramaswamy was saying. He was saying that a movement based on first principles and moral authority is much better than one based on sort of grievance and victimhood. And which I think is correct. And I think where Jason and TJ could reconcile this is the whole point of believing in God is that the moral authority comes from God. Right. If you have a worldview that believes in God and that includes God in your worldview, then you're subordinating your own moral authority to the moral authority of God. You're actually entirely pushing it off to God. And I think that was the real first layer point that he's getting at is like the Republican conservative movement should be using the moral authority that it has, not because we as individuals have moral authority. And we can actually talk about, does he see that distinction? Hard to say. We can certainly say in Christian spheres, sinners that we are, we're clear on that. The moral authority does not come from us. Now, I know he's pointing to him being Hindu, and I know my ins and outs of some religions, but not all of them. And I don't know with Hindus. I've never seen anything that says they view themselves as sort of inherently flawed with the doctrine of original sin. Sinners that are in need of reform. So I won't just grant that to him, gratis. But that I think is the first thing to get out. Is he's talking about conservatives should be approaching it with moral authority, not because we have moral authority, which, by the way, is what the progressive left does do. When they, posture a sort of moral supremacy, it's because of how they see the world, how they themselves frame the morality and formulate the morality. So that is a significant difference when they claim that their views, be it toward the environment, toward immigration, toward families, toward schooling, toward public funds, are more moral. Right. It's because they've formulated that they're more moral. They're the source of that heightened morality, whereas the Christian doesn't say that. And so I thought at least that little correction is worthwhile, and it kind of springboards now to talk more deeply about not just Ramaswamy, but then also
Donald Trump,
the conservative movement going forward. I always say we don't know that the conservative movement will go one way or another, and so we have to try and propose one that we would like to see it go in the direction of, because we know good and well that the Uniparty will be happy to co-opt the conservative movement for the next 50 plus years. Yeah. Happily. So that force is they are already set toward trying to do that. It's not that we can say the future of the Republican Party is this. We have to say, we hope that the future of the Conservative Party can be X, Y, or Z. Right.
And to make another distinction is that the moral authority that the progressives and the liberals claim is based on a scientific supremacy, right? They think that secularism and science, that the morality should stem from scientific empirical data, empiricism, right? Yep. Their moral authority is empiricism, which is always flawed because empiricism is always kind of left undone. I mean, there will be no definitive empirical end of knowledge for man. That's pretty clear. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to bring AI on to bridge. They at least hope so, that they can bridge the gap for a sort of absolute empiricism. Like, no, this is definitively it, because the AI robots are much smarter than us, and they say so, which we know is super flawed in and of itself. But at least that's where they at least promote their sense of moral authority from that lens, which gives it some merit to people who live in the world, who are fleshly, right? Who are physical beings in the short lifespan of human existence. They're like, well, yeah. I mean, if you say, pick an example, whatever it is, it's moral to build a baby in an ecto farm because what's the difference? You got the genes; it's the same exact baby, right? I mean, from an empirical standpoint. So, I mean, that's where they're trying to run that gamut. And I agree with you and I agree with Vivek that the conservative movement, for all of its 501c3 Protestant and Catholicism, but mostly Protestantism, are very gun shy around the true origin of the moral authority in the movement. Not their moral authority, but moral authority writ large. They're like very gun shy around it. So yeah, I mean, I agree.
Let's jump in right here. That I think this is a point that people lose on, or it's hard to see the way through the weeds, which is, why is it, Christians will claim it all the time, people of faith will claim it all the time, that you need God for your morals to be grounded in anything. Okay. Everyone loves this line, Martin Luther King certainly popularized it from St. Augustine in his letter from Birmingham jail that in unjust law is no law at all. Okay, what does that stem from? What they would say in the Christian traditions, they would say that a law that contravenes the eternal law does not have binding authority or binding power or capacity. Now here's the interesting point. So people go, well, you need God for morality. Not the way leftists in our modern world sees authority, because their means of authority is coercion. So they mean to say that if we tell you that you have to drive this speed and you break it, then we can throw you in jail. We can strip you of certain freedoms and goods that you enjoy here in this life, which they can do. Okay? So even our understanding of why God is binding on morality takes a spiritual level of looking at life and reality that goes a level deeper than people do and that people are comfortable with. Let's put it this way. An unjust law that you transgress. So they say that America comes out with a law. If you go to church on Sundays, you've broken our law and we can arrest you. Okay, you still need to go to church. That's the right there in the 10 Commandments. The third commandment: keep holy the Sabbath. Some people by their count put it the fourth, but right there. All right, keep holy the Sabbath. That's once a week. You have to give due worship to God. Okay, if you go to church, that doesn't mean that this new law in America that they won't arrest you. They might. They probably will. They might even throw you in jail. They could even elevate it to the level of saying, no, we're gonna do the death penalty against this. Does this mean that you won't potentially be killed by such a rogue state? No, you could be. The whole point is that it's not binding in eternity. All right, and not only that, for you enduring that injustice, you actually grow in merit or grace, right? So that's the whole key to God's eternal law. Binds laws on the eternal sphere,
right?
And so if they're unjust, they're not binding on the eternal sphere. They're not binding on your soul. That doesn't mean that they won't have an effect here and now, and that you won't face any number of persecutions in the face of it. So I say that because
there's no guarantee that upholding your faith and love for God will yield positive results here on earth.
No.
That's this sort of, but again, and I don't mean to pick on the Protestants, but the sort of Protestantization, if that's a thing, this reformism of Christianity looks at God and the Lord as my personal Lord and Savior. So my faith in God, or my love of God, or my worship of God should yield certain results. There's like a calculable, there's a way to calculate what should come to you from your faith. And this is in large part in ways a lot of people fall out of faith completely, is because these tragic things will happen to them, or something happens and they're like, I've been worshiping God, I've been going to church, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't take the Lord's name in vain, I never curse, and yet still all these bad things are happening in my life, or things that don't match up with my prayer or with
my idea of it, that if I do those things, then good things will come to me here in this life.
Right? I mean, it's just a watered down version of a sort of barcode system for Christianity. It's like, I'm checking off all the boxes, I should get rewarded. And really, we had Professor Penn on Monday, who talked about faith from a Jewish standpoint, and the Jewish tradition, Judaism, is a very works-based faith. And you could make the argument that the Jews, in large part, are an interesting bunch within the sphere of the faith of these Abrahamic faiths, because they kind of view their covenant with God as like an equal relationship, right? So,
right, which is
completely wrong.
Which is wrong from the jump. I mean,
but I just want to say that is kind of what that is sort of where, and Professor Penn will talk about this himself as a Jewish man. It's like they view their covenant and their agreement with God much differently than the Christians and then the Protestants or whoever else. They view it like, no, we are the chosen people.
Right.
You chose us, and you tell us to do these things. If we do them, if we uphold them, and you don't deliver, you're not making good on your deal, so we're opting out of the deal.
Right.
Like, well, and so you see the anti-Jews and the secular Jews take that to the extreme. And what's funny about it is, and I appreciate Professor Penn for sharing this insight of the Jewish identity and faith, is a lot of them still use the same sort of energy system, because it is an energy system, having faith, right? There is a sort of connection between the spiritual and the eternal and the physical world. It just may not be, if I pray 10 times a day, that means I'm going to get what I pray for in my nighttime bedstand, Christianity. No, but live in a certain way, creates a certain energy around you. And the anti-Jews know to use that and tap into that while still, that is the biggest way to take the Lord's name in vain, is to use the energy of God and being the chosen people, and then rejecting God when you're asked about it in public.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. First, this is actually a good segue. Let's go into the covenants. Let's talk about the covenants, because it's important to note when St. Paul writes, in his letters, so much about the old law and reframing it. And again, I've said it before, I take St. Paul with tradition to be the author of the letter to the Hebrews, where he really gives his sort of doctoral dissertation on the faith. And there in Hebrews 11, he lays out how you can how the lens of faith gives you the rubric to interpret all of salvation history. Okay? Here's the key. Abraham, so you mentioned it. They view it as God chose us and tells us to do these things. So if we do them, we're good to go. Okay? It's worth noting that's correct. But it was butchered at each time. Right. God gave a promise to Abraham that many generations would come from him. What's the first thing he does? He goes, well, my wife's really old. I'm old. Okay, I'm going to take my maid Hagar, and I'm going to sleep with her because I got to have kids in order for the nations to come from me, right? So already right there, broke the covenant.
This dude's going at Abraham.
Yeah, broke the covenant right there.
This dude's a theology radical now. He's going straight at Abraham on day one.
No, so he breaks the covenant, and what does God do? He says, okay, now you're going to do the sign. I'm going to renew this covenant with you. And the sign is going to be the circumcision, right? Which actually fits. His sin was sort of sexual, and now we're going to do circumcision, okay? And now you have to hold out, okay? And then he gives him the child, right? He gives him Isaac. Now he's going to be tested. He has to offer Isaac up, right? Which is also a prefigurement of God offering up himself in the person of Christ, right? And as Thomas Aquinas says, Father Ripperger is pointing this out, but the whole of the spiritual life boils down to one's capacity to sacrifice. God is showing in eternally offering the sacrifice of his own son that he is perfect. He's perfect in sacrifice. Okay, so back to Abraham is now, he's given the son, okay, he renews the covenant with him, all right? And now he has to offer up Isaac, okay, that's a prefigurement, he lets him take him back, okay. Now the promise is there. Abraham's going to have kids, right? It's going to pass to Isaac, and then it's from Isaac, he's going to have Jacob and Esau. It's going to pass to Jacob due to some trickery, too, worth noting, right? Now, Jacob, he's going to have his 12 sons, all right? 11th of which is Joseph, all right? Kind of the special one, chosen one by his wife, whom he loves the most, Rachel, okay? And Joseph is going to be hated by his brothers and kicked out, all right? I'm taking you through this very briefly just to say that Joseph is going to be the one that gets the Israelites, they're not Jews at this point, the Israelites to Egypt. And it's from there, 400 years later, that Moses comes on the scene. And these are people that have a promise, but they don't really have any structure. They don't have any practice of faith. They don't have any sort of regular rituals. Passover hasn't taken place. Now God is going to now interact with them to open up this covenant. He's going to say, okay, I made it to Abraham, but he broke it.
And it's worth noting, because for all you Christians out there and people who follow the scripture, understand that there were huge swaths of time in between the people being chosen in covenant and then God actually coming and interacting with them and them having any type of faith tradition. Yeah. There's a real lineage
Praxis.
That people that people kind of obfuscate when they talk about Christian or Jewish or even Muslim identity. Now they're kind of like, it's all right now, centered around my lifetime. It's like, no. There were generations and generations of people who were of the covenant that never had got to realize it or really even interact with it. Yep. Because, God works on his own clock.
Yep.
It's not our clock.
Okay, so let's fast forward, right? Because he's saying God chose them. If we do what we're supposed to do, then God has to deliver the goods. Well, we know with Abraham, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. God no longer, whatever covenant agreement he came into, when that's broken on that end, by the way, there's a ritual that's done. When God first comes to Abraham, there's a sacrifice ritual that was active in those times where they would cut these animals in half down the middle. They'd spread them apart. And this is when they were making a covenant, a treaty with another sort of nomad tribe. They'd cut them in half and they'd walk through them. And what they'd be doing is they'd be bringing a curse upon themselves. They'd be saying, I'm walking through these dead animals. If I break this covenant, let it be done to me what we did to these animals. Right? So it's as high stakes of a covenant as you can have. Abraham breaks it. It's by God's mercy that he goes, all right, I'm going to renew it because I got a plan. Because the one who makes the covenant is perfectly faithful, God. He's perfectly faithful, right? Okay, so now they go through, all right, they've broken it. We can say in perpetuity, same thing with Adam. In perpetuity, God doesn't owe them another thing going forward if you're really measuring justice, not another thing. But now he comes to Moses, and he says, now, Moses, you're going to be the mediator because I'm making the covenant now with the Israelite people, not just with Abraham, with the Israelite people, all right? And what do? They go and worship the golden calf, right? So we go from the 10 commandments to having to be renewed by the Levitical laws, okay, which is an extensive breakdown because God is actually going to have to renew that covenant, okay? And then they're wandering through the desert. We have more rebellions in the book of Numbers, all right? And then he's actually, the third time, we call it Deuteronomy, the second book of the law. It's actually the third book of the law because we have the 10 covenants where he was like, here, I'll give it to you straight. If you do that, you're good. Okay, nope, you need more. All right. Second law is Leviticus. Third law is Deuteronomy, which they call the second law, but Deutero means two, and onomos or whatever is law. So second law. All right, Deuteronomy. Now we're in the third iteration of the Mosaic covenant. Okay, here we go. They've broke. All right, now they're going on. The third part, but there were three parts. I'm going to give you a nation. All right, I'm going to give you kings, and then I'm going to bless all the earth through your seed. Okay, so he does the nation now with the Israelites. All right. Now David comes on the scene. All right. Again, David, he's king. He's giving him the goods. He's starting to establish Jerusalem. All right. He's chosen him. He's anointed him. Okay. What does David go and do? All right. Uriah is away on war. Mm-hmm. He spots Bathsheba, and he's like,
gotta have
she's
her.
Fine. You know, she's probably the finest woman around.
I gotta have
right.
her.
Gotta have. And so he draws her in. He's charismatic. He's a musician. He's smart. He's sharp. She's going for it, and now they're making a baby. Okay.
Lost the first baby.
By the way, that baby's not Solomon. Yep. That baby, as punishment, his life will be taken, right? As punishment. Sometimes God uses a person to punish other people. That's another thing. People aren't clear on that. They're not even willing to begin to wrap their mind around it. This is partly how justice works, right? So he will use someone as punishment of someone else. God has proprietary rights to do that and more as the Godhead. It is not an exchange between equals. Totally just. All right. He does it. All right. But what does he do? Where does the mercy come through? He renews it with David. He says, okay, and now what they get in the development of here, right? So we had Moses, we got the 10 Commandments, Levitical laws, Deuteronomy. Now what ends up happening is the thing that's going to start to seal it is the wisdom literature. All right. The Psalms, the Proverbs. He's going to start to prepare them for what's that third part of the blessing to Abraham? Nation, kings, blessing. Nation, kings, blessing. That third part is now the whole world is going to be blessed through his seed. That's going to be Christ. Okay? It is the only covenant. It is the only covenant that's made where it's not broken, where there's not a sin that categorically removes the entitlement to the promise from the people, right? And this is why it takes... The Catholic Church has always held throughout its time that the Catholic Church is the Israelite faith, right? It's not that it got to this point and then it went separate. It's that this is the Israelite faith. This is the faith of Abraham, right? And that's what Paul is saying, right? That's what he says clearly in Hebrews. That's what's there. That's when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees throughout the Gospels. It's laying this out. And then you have the reality, the fruits of it, everything in between. So my point in giving us that brief there sort of history theological lesson is to say that, yes, they were chosen, but whatever entitlement they have at the claim of that has not only been broken once, it's been broken at every step along the way, right? And what Paul says is that, guess what? Even Israelites and Jews, it's okay because God is merciful, right? And your works were never going to be the thing that justifies it, because he says Abraham wasn't justified by works, but by faith. He believed. He struggled to believe, and he believed, and God justified him, right? And that's the same thing. All the people along the way, there are people, there are patriarchs, we call them the patriarchs of the faith from that Israelite time period, that Old Testament time period, that are counted amongst the saved. They're saved by faith, right? It's not because, we met these things, we met the conditions, and now we're good to go, right? That's actually, again, on a level deeper, that's the wrong understanding of the relationship of the person to heaven. Heaven is not a reward for people who haven't been that bad or who are kind of good. A natural being cannot rise to a supernatural end. We can do natural ends, we can do natural acts, but God's grace has to move through us. A supernatural movement has to push us to a supernatural end. Okay, and that's what grace is. It's a movement of God toward an eternal good or a supernatural good. Right? So it's a supernatural movement toward a supernatural good. Right? And that's there from the beginning of the whole covenant history. Right? Is that this is the dynamic at play. It's not that, ours is like this, but yours is like this. It's there. And we don't even have to say, well, you have to believe in Christ in order to get this, because we can just go through it. And we can go to those. We can go to the Torah. We can go to the books of Kings and we can say, hey, no, it's still here. This is the thread. That's why when Jesus was in the temple as a young boy and he's teaching the scribes and they're amazed by his wisdom, he's not sitting there teaching them things. He's pointing out the things that are right there, and they're going, wow, how are you seeing all of this? And how are you explaining and opening up these scriptures to us like that? Right? It's the same thing he's going to do after he resurrects from the dead. Right? On the road to Emmaus, they're going to encounter the risen Lord, and they're going to be talking to him. And then what's he going to do with them and the other apostles? He's going to open up the scriptures to them. Right? He's not taking something and adding to it. He's saying what they're going, whoa, now I see it. Now I get it.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a theological sidetrack there, but
yeah, well, I sidetracked you first and bringing up the Jewish thing. I just thought it was interesting when you were saying how this whole issue of moral authority is really it's at the root of a lot of things, but it was at the root of Vivek's pitch to the American people, to get back to that. And his pitch was kind of, and I told you on the phone, I don't like when people, I won't even say I don't think it's prudent. First of all, I don't think it's prudent, but I really doubt the genuineness of it when people go, I'm more moral than the other guy.
Right.
Number one, I don't think it's a good idea because...
Which is the point, though. That's my point is he wasn't saying that he's more moral. He's saying that the position has more moral authority if it's backed by God. And it does.
No, but he's kind of saying, really, he's kind of saying, I'm Donald Trump without all of the Donald Trump baggage.
Yeah, see, I don't...
But then, no, if you go listen to him across, because I watched him on MSNBC with
but I
One
think
Morning
that,
Joe. It was
right.
the other. Who's the other guy on MSNBC? I forgot his name. Anyway, I watched him on MSNBC, and the guy, and this is how the uniparty and the establishment really will come to your aid if you're a threat. If you're willing to try and take out the guy who's really a threat, they won't let me on MSNBC.
Yeah,
I mean, it should tell you something from the outset. If the mainstream media will allow a person to come on and say things that in every other case they deem as extreme and dangerous to public safety and black people and women and gays and trans and whoever else, children, right? These misinformations are dangerous. They're harmful to democracy. But here Vivek is coming on saying every single America First talking point that Donald Trump does, but prefaces it with, but I'm the moral version of Donald Trump. I'm actually more America First than he is. People should be skeptical of that on face value.
Yeah, I think my take would be slightly different. It's similar. It ends in the same place. I think rather than him saying I'm the more moral version of Donald Trump, he's trying to demonstrate his more moral version of Donald Trump by being the one who has everything, buttoned up. And I mean this argument-wise, right? Oh, hey, here's all the principles for why I'm doing this. And I think from the media perspective, there's a piece to it. What he's missing is when you look at the field, and this we talked about, and we can springboard from here. When you look at the field of conservative candidates, Trump is the one who has the greatest likelihood of forwarding conservative principles. Now, he is going to bastardize a set of them because he doesn't quite have the polish. There's a sense where you look at Ramaswamy and you go, man, it seems like maybe he could forward more of the principles. Here's the error in that. Here's what I think is the deep error, is that, and we can actually talk about in more detail why I think it gets to the point of an error, because he'll have the economics down, the sort of racket that's run right now is sort of, it's a step up from crony capitalism.
Political
right?
Ponzi scheme.
It's sort of an accreditation, racket thing that's going on, right? He's got that down. Geopolitically, he's solid on it. He's solid on Russia. He can navigate certain things. The difference is that he'll even say that it's a spiritual war, right? He'll even say that, the left is operational. They have an end in mind, and they're willing to, what I take from him saying they're operational, they're willing to use different means to get to their end. So if we go, well, it's this means that is the problem, it's free speech, then they'll just shift that.
Yeah.
To their end. Yep. Okay. Because they have an end in mind. So what he goes, you just have to see that they're operational. No, what you actually have to see is what their end in mind is. That's what you actually have to see. And if your worldview is counter to that end in mind, then hell hath no fury, like the wrath that will come down upon you. And can a person withstand that fury? And in the field of conservative candidates, no one comes close to Trump to being able to withstand that fury, right? Where they tarnish and all that. They'll be fine. They would be fine to not tarnish a Ramaswamy so long as all the edges button up so that their end is retained. Now, I think he sees that distinction between the means and the ends. I don't think that he's in error about that. I think his barrier is the suffering that it would take to carry through the end that is counter to the modern liberal secular end. And Trump is the one who has the best chance of doing that by far. But even him, where his weak points are where it falls apart. So the real point, and you've said this before, America First movement is not about Trump. It's that he, right now, is by far the most proven and best candidate to try and promote some significant portion. And you could even prioritize what things are more important than others. It's not geopolitics that's more important. It's probably the top thing is taking a battle axe to the sort of elitist, sophist game that's being played, all right, on a sort of personal, psychological, sociological level, all right, which speaks to the end that they have in mind, which is the total upturning and overturning of nature. Sorry, I didn't articulate it. The left's version of the end in mind is to raise man to the level of God, right? It's the city of man versus city of God. It's the continuation of the Tower of Babel here today, the Roman Empire here today, right? That is their motive, is to raise man up to the sort of the pinnacle of all existence, not just all creation, all existence, right? And so for them, that means that if you're at the pinnacle, you get to determine the playing field.
Yeah.
You get to determine things, right?
Yeah.
You can have your pleasure ethic be the guiding ethic in how you interact with other people, how you do the things you want to do, where you go, whatever. All right? That's their goal. The point would be is that the conservative end in mind has to be the giving reverence to God. It's the deferring of that. It's curbing one's own intelligence and intellect toward God. And this is where it's like Trump has at least shown the best stones to go at that piece directly. Whether he gets geopolitics right or practical politics right, which I think there's a lot of things that he fails on, and he fails on due to imprudence, like an inability. What he gets is that gist of, like, as people say, drain the swamp. Like, it's a one-liner, but it's like, that's the gist.
Yeah.
Right?
And that is the thing.
And Vivek will come in and say, I'm going to dismantle the GOP, or I'm going to dismantle the FBI, the intelligence agency. Okay, good. Right? Practically, I could even see, like, probably be a really good consultant.
Yeah, I said that.
I think that's exactly what you said.
He'd be great
He's
to help.
a good one to have on the team. I don't even think it's bad, but it's like...
The question is, if he's in the seat and all the guns are pointed at him, will this guy, can he withstand that heat?
And maybe, but here's what gives me skepticism. And this is worth talking about. What gives me skepticism is that this person sought, when he was 18 years old, he sought the Ivy Leagues to give him validation. When he was in his mid-20s, he sought the Ivy Leagues to give him validation, right? Harvard, he sought Yale Law School. And then when he was coming out late 20s, he sought Silicon Valley to give him validation. Biotech, that realm of enterprise. And he did great at it. And he got his validation at all those stops along the way, right? Valedictorian, right? 100 millionaire, right? Okay, he got his validation. But a person who has that track record of seeking that validation at those critical injunctures says to me, well, of course I'm skeptical that the next critical juncture is going to come and you're going to resort to seeking validation. Again, it's not to say, hey, get off the team. There's nothing for you to do. Not at all. And I think there's a lot that he's bringing that is strong and is great. And I think to his own credit to him, to his wisdom, he's the kind of the one other candidate in the field who has the confidence to not bash Trump. Right? That's an asset. That speaks to a sort of wherewithal. Yeah. There's something going on there. But I
think now he's even, I think in the last couple of weeks since that show took place, it's worth saying, I think there's been talk about him dropping out of as a presidential candidate and just aiming for vying for the VP. I think I saw that somewhere. I'm not quite sure.
Sure. The
polls certainly suggest that nobody has any chance staying in on the GOP side anyway. Right. Ramaswamy's behind DeSantis, and DeSantis is 40 points behind. So it's just not even a real deal. The real question is, and this is a question for you, and I said the other day. That my support for Trump in 2024 is based on one word on a sheet of paper in my notepad in my study: fear. The establishment's fear. Whoever they marshal all their resources to take out in the way that they have Donald Trump nonstop, consistently, whoever they marshal the resources to take out, I'm throwing down with, because I just get that, there's just a yin and yang. There's an ebb and flow. People who are corrupt at that level, even if it's not a conspiracy, even if the conspiracy is truly metaphysical, which we know it is, it's a metaphysical. The energy is not going to point at a person who's not a real threat to destabilize the status quo, because we all accept that the status quo is corrupt. It is wicked. Right. We don't all accept that, but at least all of us with half of a sane mind look at the California legislator passing laws that if you don't affirm your child's gender identity fluidity, now CPS can come take you, which I predicted about 4 weeks ago. Now they actually passed a law, Bill 597 or something like that. So, we all see that there's a wicked plot
afoot.
Those of us that reject that plot, whoever these people are getting together to conspire to destroy, that person at least they believe that person has a shot at destabilizing the plot. And that's worth a consideration. Not only is it worth a consideration, I think it's where you should start. We are in a war, a physical war, with real physical consequences in politics and strategy with this opponent. And it's not beneath Satan to I don't like, I just say this, I don't like when the Protestants go, oh, well, all of your strategy and all of your efforts are for nothing anyway. This is all written. It's all this is Babylon. It's destined to fail, and just pray. The end is here. Jesus is coming, and Jesus may come in 1,000 years, 2,000 years.
We don't know.
Yeah, and you should be willing to die for Christ. That's great, but don't. But in what era, as a theology teacher, in what era did Christianity become such a passive religion? It's not the religion I know from Scripture.
There's a great book by priests.
And I'm just going to say, you 501c3 Protestants and Catholics, you all are pacifists. You think that, I mean, the milquetoast drive-through version of Christianity is come to church on Sunday, pray, and you'll be saved, and nothing else matters, and you know, and all of your other life and work, just take the punches, roll with the punches. That's just the way it is. It's destined to be that way. I mean, and I get it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it just feels like if you really want to look at the effect of Europe, if you really want, and I hate this too, as black people, I face this a lot in the black community. Black people go, white man's religion. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Christianity is not a white man's religion. It's just not. Yeah. In fact, Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe. It's a fact. So it's not a white man's religion, number one. And that's just black people trying to get out of having to have any faith whatsoever and rolling with this sort of, you know, comedic, astrological, numerology.
The Roman Empire is the one that most fiercely persecuted for the first 300 years. It actually didn't thrive there in the first 300. We're talking 300 years. 300 America's years. 250 years old. So we're talking a long time.
People don't even grasp that. Yeah. You know, that the people's.
But briefly, let me throw this in because.
But before you go, I just wanted to say, if you could make one claim about Europe's effect on Christianity, is that it spread Christianity through colonization, or spread Christianity through its, you know, through globalism. First couple of iterations of globalism, wherever the Roman Empire touched, and wherever really it was more the British Empire and the Spanish and some of these places, wherever they touched, Christianity sort of popped up as well. But the number one effect that I see that Europe had on Christianity was that it watered it down. It took it from being a tribe religion to being a post-industrial, post-enlightenment sort of, you know, political organization. And that's not to defame the Catholic Church. I'm just saying that before, if you go back in Scripture, the Christianity you read in Scripture is a religion and faith of warriors, of kings who had carried swords. David was a warrior. He slayed Goliath with a slingshot. Solomon was a warrior. These, you know, Joshua, these people were warriors. They were tribesmen that really fought for and had to be willing to fight and die, not just die, fight and die for what they believe in. Post-Europe, post-Renaissance Christianity is like, hey, just pray and turn the other cheek. It kind of comes to a head with a figure like Martin Luther King. And you hear a lot of black people use Martin Luther King in a Christian context to justify why they stay with the Democrats. I mean, it's kind of strange when you look at it across time. It's like Martin Luther King turned the other cheek. Malcolm's like any means necessary, which is an error in some ways too. But you see the dynamic of ultimately religion and faith now in the modern time being used to keep people in their homes, right? To keep people kind of off the streets and you know, praying for the Messiah and just leaving it at that. It's like, what do you think about that?
Well, one, I mean, if we fast forward all the way to today, it's being operationalized, to use that term, toward the end, which is to siphon it off. The book I wanted to mention, it's called From Apostolic to Christendom Mission. All right, it's a great book by the head of University of Mary, I believe, president. He's a priest, Monsignor. It's great. It talks about the difference in the Christian ethos in apostolic times, where you're the undercard, versus Christendom, where you're reigning at the height of power. So this is actually be like late Middle Ages, what you talked about. We do have to fill in some of that history. When you say Europe watered it down, well, Europe preserved it from the year, but prior to it being termed Europe, from the year 300, the collapse of the Roman Empire, until 1400. It was little silos of people that passed along the writings, the Scripture. They rewrote them, right? They prayed. They kept the faith. Let me make a correction then. I
didn't mean Europe as in totality, or white people in Europe in totality. I don't even like to talk like that. I don't even believe in whiteness. I think that's just a scam, a political scam. But anyway, what I meant was Europe as the political hierarchy. The effect that the political hierarchy had on Christianity writ large was that it kind of turned it into a passive citizen's religion versus a warrior's religion. The little small sects of people, I think it was the little small communities of Christians that really preserved the strength of Christianity in Europe, not the political establishment.
It was, but I think you'd also have to point to the Carolingian Empire, which is for those, that would be France in the 800s, 900s. Okay, Charlemagne, you get those people. So there was an empire role, right? You have an empire role. What seems to take place is once, and this I think would fit with what you're getting at, once Europe went from the peoples, whatever peoples there were that were separate, and it became Europe, and it started to get a hierarchy that spanned across these sort of what we call these sort of unnatural borders. These unnatural, or they were actually natural borders distinguishing people, language, geography, culture, history, ancestry, and it became this sort of tent. Then all of a sudden it takes Christianity, and you get a version of it that's entirely watered down, because anytime you sort of get pluralism involved in such a passionate religious endeavor, it either breaks it down or the pluralism fails, right? One of those two things, those are the two forces acting on it when you get that. So yeah, I think when you get the modern, and by modern I mean the last 400 years, European empire and the advance of a sort of convenient Christianity, then you get the distortion of it. But in terms of missionary effects and, spreading the gospel and bringing the faith to the corners of the world, that happens, as you said, that happens prior to Europe. Right. A lot of its fruits are happening in the other vector direction of Europe for much of history. So I think it's not that Christianity, this is one of the things that's fascinating about Christianity. It's not meant for only one circumstance. It's not meant for only a nomadic tribe. And even the faith of Israel shows that. Abraham, it's a family. Israelite, it's a people who's a minority in another nation. David, it's a nation. It's the superpower where other kings and queens of the world come to them to behold the glory of this nation. So right there you have three models where it fits. In Christian times, after the time of Christ, you have it in the Abrahamic model at the beginning, right? Then you have it in the sort of spread out networks through the first few hundred years, and then you have it in the sort of monarchic form, the kingdom form, okay? It works in all those. All of them have potential downsides. There's none where you just go, okay, that's it, that's what it is, right? If you say, well, it has to be small. No, of course, we've talked about this. If someone goes, well, we're going to balkanize, well, they'll turn on you right away. Yeah. If you go small enough with it, they'll turn on you. Yeah. So there's not a clear answer to it there, but I think it's worth noting that keep that book. It's a great book from Apostolic to Christendom Mission. It talks about how you have to approach the different eras. What the thesis of the book is that we're still living like we're in Christendom era when it's an apostolic time. So the Christendom era is the one where you sort of you have the small groups of people who don't believe, and you're sort of patient with them, and you maybe different ethics emerge as being valuable in those times. Okay, apostolic time, it's way different. And so many people, boomers, and pretty soon they're going to make up a term, and my Wikipedia is going to read like boomerphobe, or anti-boomer, AJ Barker. But the reality is they still want us to be in Christendom. They do not want us to be in apostolic mission because it's too uncomfortable. They don't want us to be in that phase of history, but we are, and that's the reality. And it's coming for everyone in between. And I think to circle it back to Ramaswamy, he has that intellectual sort of clarity of the apostolic, but he's Christendom, right? He's playing that role again. 18, you're unsure of your identity.
Ivy League.
Where do you go? Ivy League, right? 24, you're done with school. What am I going to do? Law school and Ivy League, right? These are important junctures, inflection points in the person's formation of their identity. And a lot of people at those inflection points opt for things that are very secure, very externally validating. And we can say Trump didn't do that. I said it to you. I laugh about it. Yes, we all know Trump is not only, rich, but puts on a show of it, and it's funny. It's just the way he does it is itself him kind of punking people too, which is kind of funny about it. Yeah. But I have I have pretty strong conviction that if Trump were a poor man that didn't have much money, he'd probably be the same dude. He'd probably still be talking trash. He'd probably still not drink alcohol because the dude just doesn't drink alcohol. It's not like he was an alcoholic.
Right.
Dude just doesn't drink. Like, he'd probably be the same. He'd probably be trying to get laid as often as he can.
Yeah.
And he'd probably be going around telling people what he thinks, shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
Like, that says something. The fact that you can look at them, can't say the same about Ron DeSantis. What I will point out, though, and this too is slightly different from you, I think that Trump's imprudence is going to cost him, and it's going to cost him fatally. Fatally, not necessarily to death, but I think his political career. I think that he did not recognize. He recognized he had an instinct for what he was going up against.
Yeah.
But he didn't recognize with sort of prudence. He wasn't, he wasn't wise as serpents. He didn't realize how he's going to pay the consequence. When he had that first term and he did not move to act on those things right away, he was like, "Hey, I'm president. Let's feel this out, right? This is another stunt. I can stun on it. I can punk people through this, right? I'm president."
Yeah.
Handle my Twitter handle, 45th president of the United States, right?
Yeah.
Who gets to flex like that? So he does that. He waits 3-4 years, and now, boom, shoe drops. All right, you're off social media. All right, next one. This DOJ, they're going to get him. They're going to put him in jail. I am very convinced of that. I do not think it's just, but I am very convinced that he is going to get a 300-year conviction set against him.
No.
And maybe not. But I'm convinced, and here's
Not
why.
a chance.
Even this is biblical, right? You have to atone for the wrongs that you've done. And his carelessness, this is going to be his penance, right? This is going to be his atonement, right? That's due him, And I think that for him, it's going to be fatal. I do, to his political career. I think that he took it too for granted, right? In that first iteration, I think it's going to be fatal. And so the reason I say that is because DeSantis. Hold on, let me just throw this out there. Let's at least war game this.
Yeah.
All right. DeSantis 40 points behind Ramaswamy, whatever. Okay, they're off the map. If Trump is legit out of the picture, is a no-go, now this field changes.
No doubt.
And then, we're all like, I don't know what happens. So, all right, fine. Trump's in, okay, he'll win the nomination. Okay, he'll get he's still banking on, I still think that this is part of his, his tragic flaws. He's playing in a way, playing it cool, like, it'll get to the courts, they'll appeal it and blah, 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 and then it'll get struck down, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I still think that
the boomers have way too much faith in the rule of law. They have too much faith in the institution.
What did Christ do when and I know it's Christ, but what did he do when they came at him with an unjust claim? He knew full well the full depths that this was going to. And when they come at Trump with it, there's just a lack of sort of circumspection of what things, and like I said, Exhibit A is the Alex Jones lawsuit. That is Exhibit A. I'm still reeling from hearing that number. That shattered my whole worldview of what a lawsuit could be. That someone could do a personal lawsuit of $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion. That's still, I never would have conceived of that. I would have thought at worst a punitive lawsuit would max out at 10 million, 20 million. I couldn't imagine a personal lawsuit. They literally said that the emotional harm that he's caused to people, the price tag on that is $1.5 billion. That, to me, more than any other circumstance in our modern times, signals the new territory that we're in.
Yeah. That
they could slap you. I don't care. I don't care if you're Elon Musk. They could slap you with $1 trillion lawsuit. Why could they not? What could stop them?
Well, and the predicate,
the
predicate for that is, when you really look at it, the predicate for that type of distortion of monetary value or sort of economic reason, economic reason, right, is the Fed and the way we print money.
Yeah.
I mean, we've started to just print money, $1.5 trillion every year for this or that or, whatever it is. The American people or people all around the world see $1 trillion now and they're like, it's always $1 trillion. It's always $1 billion. It's always 800 billion or 80 billion or 700 billion for this or that. That's just commonplace. But Professor Penn, I mean, he said on my podcast yesterday, he was talking about the difference between $1 million, $1 billion, and $1 trillion. And if you stack the money, if you stack $1 billion, I think it was $1 million is what, about as tall as what? A chair. $1 million is as tall as a chair.
It's gonna be $1 billion. Be 1,000 times that.
$1 billion is as tall as the tallest building.
Sure.
$1 trillion is from here to the space station.
Yeah.
Okay, people's exponential math is so bad. And I use a different example is time, because I think people's, are better with time than they are with visible distinction. 1 million seconds is 11 days. Like in 11 days, 1 million seconds have passed, right? 11 days is nothing. Like it'll be, I think about what I was doing 11 days ago, what I'll be doing from 11 days from now. There's one Big 3 game this weekend, and then they'll be going into the second Big 3 game, 3 days later in 11-day span. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. Right. I'm 31 right now.
Yeah.
I'm just reaching 1 billion seconds alive.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just the scope of
a trillion's 1,000-fold that. So it's 3,000 years. 3,000 years.
3,000
prior
years.
to
3,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. The scope of, and I only say that because you're right, but people don't see how these things are ushered in slowly, where the American people's, like when Alex Jones was sued for $1 billion, I went out and said how crazy it was, and people were like, "You're just saying that because that's your boy." I'm like, no, it has nothing to do. I mean, you could have sued. You could have picked anybody.
Anyone.
Anybody. And I don't even have to like them.
Yeah.
It could have been Bill Gates. If you sued Bill Gates for $1 billion on defamation,
I'd have been
like, come on, what do we do? What's going on? Now, I might have cheered and been like, yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
But if you ask me seriously, I think it was a fair number. I'm like, no, what are we doing?
Well, this is why I say.
And even if furthermore, for Bill Gates, it would probably be a lot closer to being reasonable than Alex Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Gates is a 100 billionaire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably a bad example. Pick somebody I don't like let's say, whose brother is the brother? Cuomo.
Okay, sure.
He's a media figure.
Yeah.
Probably worth 100 million, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe worth 100 million.
I don't know. He probably got 15 or mil or so. From
he's probably got some money. I don't know. I mean, the Cuomo family's New York royalty. These dudes had money, number one. But so he's probably got money. But even if it was Cuomo, and for that sexual harassment deal, and they were like $1 billion, I'd have been like, what the fuck is going on?
This is why I didn't even realize what my assumption was until I heard that number, and then I was like, oh, my assumption was probably, like I said to you just now, 10 to 20 million. That probably would have been my cap. I never had articulated it. If someone had said $50 million, I'd probably been like, whoa, this is like. This is shaking me up.
That's aggressive.
That someone's doing that. When they said 1.5 billion for emotional distress, I'm going, well, you can just, why is it not $1 trillion? What's putting it, what quantifies it to 1.5 billion?
I think Alex actually said that in the courtroom. He said, just make it $1 trillion. Whatever you guys want.
So this is my point to people is, all right, maybe it won't happen.
But my point is this. Wait 1 second. One second.
Go ahead.
They did it for a reason, because they know Alex Jones doesn't have $1 billion.
Yeah.
No, serious. This is serious.
Yeah.
They're setting a precedent.
This is my point.
This is how the rule of law is going to be weaponized against conservatives and Christians. All they're doing is throwing a crazy number out there to set a precedent for even bigger fish who they want to intimidate around freedom of speech.
I mean, how much emotional distress has...
It was really meant for Elon Musk.
Yes, how much emotional distress has Elon Musk caused all the woke liberals in the world and Twitter? I mean, he's probably going to have to pay them $400 trillion.
Tesla, everybody gets a Tesla.
And everything else.
40 acres from him. 40 acres in a meal. 40 acres in a Tesla.
But this is what they're doing with this stuff. I always thought it was so funny when people would say that person got 2 life sentences in jail. Well, that's obviously dumb. And then you go, well, life sentence is 27 years. Why? Why is a life sentence 27? Why do you, right? This is the dumbness in our sort of technical society or whatever, right? You don't need to give someone a second life sentence. What I think you're going to get with Trump, and this is another one, and we'll see if maybe you're right. Maybe it falls apart.
Not happening.
Okay, yep.
It's not happening.
I would say
unless their plan is to throw Donald Trump in prison, follow through with the prosecution, actually convict him and throw him in prison in order to purposely spark a civil war. Well,
I don't see why that would be disqualifying.
I'm saying
right?
it's not. But I do think that the left has a sort of Asian Chinese mindset around power and dominance, totalitarianism.
I don't think they have deep enough for that.
No, I think they are. The people who run it.
Maybe.
No, the people who run it are.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
The people who run it are trying to win without having to fire a shot.
Yeah.
They're trying to win without their life being. Sure, they'll run the BLM, purple-haired, white, liberal millennials, and for all of you out there, you 20-year-olds that are running out in the streets, understand that your Democratic elites are sacrificing you like pawns, hoping you get killed in some protest between the radical right white supremacists who's really Christians, who are really patriots, who are really MAGA, who are then really Steve Bannon, who was actually a Kennedy Democrat himself. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're willing to run those people out there in a just like the Russians threw all their prisoners to the front line in the war with Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're willing to do that to them. But I'm talking your Rachel Maddows and Pelosi and Clintons and these type of people, Bill Gates.
No,
they're not willing. They don't really want it to go where people are now coming to actively look for them. They don't want it like that.
Yeah, all those people you mentioned have one or no kids. They can't think in multi-100-year time frames. They can intellectualize it. They can abstract it, but they can't. China's 4,000 years old.
No, I get that, but all I'm saying, just around this particular thing where if they can, they would like to win the fight without firing a shot.
Here's what I would grant you.
That's why you go to the courts and try and get this manufactured consent around Trump's guilt and his eventual conviction.
Sure.
Is because you don't want to have to face them out in the open field.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. I think that's the beta.
That's what China's doing. That's what China's doing.
Right.
China's very beta like that too.
Yes, for sure.
They want to go to Palestine now around the back of America's history and go, hey, you guys don't like the Americans anyway. Yeah. You want to join with us, right?
Yeah, this brief excursion into wine society ethics, I think they really love the idea of pulling the China maneuver off. Oh, we beat them without firing a shot. The problem is they're all too intemperate and too unformed that when the rubber meets the road and it doesn't work, they go, whatever, just shoot them. They just can't. They just can't control themselves.
That's a fact. You're right.
No,
you're right.
They really like the idea, the history books,
they're not OG like the Chinese. The Chinese will really see it through.
This is my point.
You're right.
Someone will write. Robert Greene will write 40 Laws of Power, and my name will be included. Next to a Machiavelli or whoever is. This is the cunning and the tech. That's the idea they like. That's how they see themselves.
Yeah.
And then when rubber hits them, just kill them.
Yeah.
Let's just hang them.
They don't got that temperance.
They don't have that type of resolve.
Inner constitution.
And this is my point, where I said China's a 4,000-year society. That resolve comes from the substance gained over being planted for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It just, as we'd say, it hits different.
It's a culture.
Your feet have a sort of anchor and weight under them that it's like, whether you intellectualize it or not, it's there. And you're like, oh, this is nothing. My guys, they're coming to take care of this business. So we're going to just let you go. And then the next one's going to let you go. And the next one. And it doesn't even feel right to them when one starts to get, nervous and shook up or something, like a Mao at certain phases. But even Mao, loses his kid to a sort of like unjust death when he's like 30, 40. People these days would have to be in, clinical care for a tragedy like that to befall him. And this dude, all right, it reframes his worldview. He takes the psychopathy up 5 notches, post 40 years old, right? But then, his ideas are bad down the street. But even that, you get what I'm saying? There's like a built-in sort of composure.
There's a constitution in it.
Yeah. That's like...
He didn't waver.
That's different. It's not someone who's, 1982, bowl cut Rachel Maddow. Whatever. Like, it's not what's going on.
Yeah, Rachel's a far cry from Mao Zedong.
It's not happening like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? And so this is my point is like.
But Mao was playing a much bigger game. I'm just saying
yes.
around the prosecution of Trump, they will, if they can, I have doubts that they want to really, if they
bring
can.
the smoke.
If they really can avoid it. They don't want the smoke.
But I would revert to the point that you've made for the last 3 years. Hold on, let me say this.
Yeah,
I'm going to revert to the point that you've made for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
These people won't get up off their couches to actually revolt.
True.
So they're going to call that bluff. At a certain point, they've already been incrementally calling the bluff. You know it, right? You talk about it all the time. They incrementally call that bluff just to see, right?
It's like a boxing match. I'm a feint.
Yeah.
See if you'll go. I got to feint you.
Yeah.
I got to show you the jab and see will you bite on that. And if you don't bite, then slowly but surely I'm an inch close enough to be able to actually touch you. Okay, now I can touch you. Now the right follows.
Yep.
Now I can start to piece things together. That's what they're doing to conservatives and Christians.
And they've been doing it for 20 years now.
Yeah.
In a sort of focus.
Oh, and they're touching
They've done it longer.
If you're going to use the boxing analogy, they have crossed the Rubicon of space between us, distance. They're now touching us with the jab and lining us up for a crazy right hand right down the pipe. Yeah. I mean, and
just a series of them, not even just one. Just a series of them,
taking your president out before the election even comes,
I'm saying,
is as much of a right hand for an American citizen as you could do.
I'm saying that people, just all the people out there that are still like, yeah, it's going to be good. You include, enter into this space with me. Mm-hmm. What happens to your worldview when they deliver a verdict that says 450 years jail time?
It's impossible. It's not impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's not even possible. I can't even enter into that space.
I'm a boomer.
I can't even enter into that space. That's not even a thing.
No, you know I can. But I know most people are thinking that.
But to me, this is where, when I heard the 1.5 billion, and people like you and I, we have more of the eyes to see. When we hear that one, I don't need to hear 5 more. I go, because we actually have that sense of scope. Mathematically, our minds are good enough at it.
You're right.
I think that if they drop a 450-year sentence on him, I'll be like, we're in the same territory I thought we were in a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. We're in the same territory. Now, there'd be a lot of people that would be like, what? By the way, all these people that are afraid to get off their couches, when they drop that 450-year sentence, you think they're going to be more motivated to get off their couch? No, they're going to be less. They're going to be like, dang, it's like that? They could hit me with 90 years.
Well, there's a set of
for nothing.
Well, let's war game it then. We got at least 30 minutes left. Let's war game this out then. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
The first thing they're gonna have to do is clip a couple Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, or add a few on. Which you're probably right. It would probably have to be clipping rather than.
Yeah, can't add them right now.
Yeah, that would be.
You got a locked court. There may be. Maybe one.
But how quick does something like that get up to a Supreme Court?
Oh, it's going to. Well, that's the part that they can expedite. Because
can they expedite?
Well,
that?
Yeah.
Couldn't they slow play that?
No, because if you slow play it, then he'll still. But they want to expedite it, because if you slow play it,
so long as the appeal is in process.
Well, if you slow play it, the presidential election will come, and that'll only swell the support.
But my point is,
so they're going to want to expedite, come to a verdict, and get to the appeals long before 24 even.
No, but here's the point. You're saying that if they convict and then they go through the appeals, now he doesn't have to go to a jail until the appeals are resolved. That's not how appeals work, right? If someone's convicted of murder and they have an appeal case, they still go to jail, waiting for that appeal.
No.
And when that appeal comes through, so this is my point. I'm saying even if they slow play it. Why would that preclude them from keeping him in jail?
A lot of times if you're not a flight risk, which obviously he's. Well, I mean, and all of that stuff is
claim it, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, all of that stuff is in play, and again, I say, the American people are about to have their bluff called. I would agree with you. I'm not saying that they won't try it. In fact, I think the system would love to call our bluff in this way. And that's why, I had a clip go viral about Donald Trump that Carrie Lake reposted, and she's awesome as well. But it went viral because I said, it's Donald Trump, even if from a prison cell. And you can actually vote for somebody in prison.
Right.
You can run for president in prison. So which is why I think they would have to clip him, even if they did convict him. They'd have to kill him.
I don't think so. I think
No, I think the MAGA movement is so strong that he would be the first person to run for president that isn't on the main ticket that had 70 million, if maybe 100 million. If they throw him in prison, this is what I'm saying. This is what will happen.
First off, that would be electric.
He's a lightning.
If you were running for president from prison,
he'd have to.
That would be must-see TV.
No, he'd have to.
All the time.
Let me tell you this. If they throw, this is why they might not do it. Because you can still run for president from prison.
Okay.
So if they throw him in prison, I mean, imagine people think the MAGA energy. He's actually
What with his one phone call a day?
Oh my goodness! You kidding me?
They won't.
You kidding? That one phone call is gonna be selling out like a Floyd Mayweather Pacquiao pay-per-view. Okay, but listen, people actually think Donald Trump is a provocateur. I think the part of him, the boomer part of him, the New York City real estate mogul part of him, the reputation of his brand being such a public brand, keeps him from really pressing on that gas like that. Like he always walks back the MAGA movement.
Agreed.
Like, no,
agreed.
We want you guys
this is the
we want you to be, we want
Yeah.
you to be, no, don't, it's not about that. No, you support the, whatever the thing is, he'll say something controversial, but he'll walk it back to reel people into a place that seems more reasonable. Right. If they throw him in prison, the gloves are coming off. And the MAGA and there is a MAGA movement out there. I'm not talking about the vast middle of working class Americans who just want the American citizenship to actually be American citizenship. That's the majority of the MAGA movement. They try and paint them like they're all white supremacist, hillbilly, hicks. But the majority of us are just like, guys, stop selling us out to China. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. There is a movement out there, though, that's way out there on the fringe, that's MAGA. They listen to Donald Trump like scripture. And if he goes to prison and he presses on the gas, this country's gonna break out into straight violence. I don't hope for that. I hope not. But I would encourage them not to try that maneuver. Just cheating the elections. I mean, why send them to prison? If the election, we all know the elections aren't secure. Just cheat them.
Okay, hold on.
If you're sending them to prison, you're doing it to make a statement. And when you make statements,
this is good.
When you make statements, you got to be ready to back that shit up. And I don't think that the posh American mindset is ready for this type of civil unrest. I mean, I know it's like when a society gets too prosperous and wealthy, everybody has this inkling towards violence. Like you're seeing this now with if you're not online, AJ doesn't do social media. But since UFC rose up, Conor McGregor sort of kicked off this reignition of combat sports. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to go train martial arts, right? Yeah. Everybody's hitting the pads, everybody's wrestling, everybody's doing jiu-jitsu, everybody's, into some type. And I get it. It's like, you want to be a part, you hype, you want to, your life is too comfortable. Yeah. You're like, I got to feel what that type of danger is about. Same guys who go free base rock climbing, right? It's like, my life isn't dangerous enough. I'm not living if there's no danger of death. Yeah. I get it. So everybody kind of has this, this, even across the aisle, it's like the Democrats over here, the Republicans over here, we're looking at each other like, should we do it? Should we go? But I don't think physically these people are really ready to go. I mean, they're fat, they're overweight, they're desensitized by social media and dopamine. Their serotonin, their sleep pattern ain't even ready to sustain any long-term conflict.
No. Yeah.
These people couldn't swim 100 yards off of. I got to tell the story real quick because we got time.
Yeah. We do.
I got time. I got to tell you the story. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, okay, and I'm at the beach. Now, you know me. I don't take any unnecessary risks. Drugs, alcohol, planes. I don't, because for me, I love this. Yeah. Like I love living, and I think this is part of the reason why God's shown me so much favor is because I truly am grateful to be alive. Yeah. Like even on a selfish level, I'm like, just fundamentally, I love this. This is awesome. Yeah. Like to be alive is great.
I can think.
This is awesome, Yeah. So I don't take any risks like that. Now, I'm also willing to die for my beliefs. So some people would say that's the biggest risk you could possibly take. But I mean any frivolous ones, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in Fort Lauderdale. We're on the beach, right? We're at the ocean. it's Minnesotans. We don't get to the ocean much. So if you get a group of Minnesotans, everybody's run straight to the ocean. They want to do the water sports. So we got tournaments, and I got these 12-year-olds, these sixth graders, and we play. And we lost our first game on Friday night. It was a close one, a little controversy. We ended up losing by like 15. Next morning we come back, we win by 18-20. Next game we have later that night, it's like 6:30. We go into double overtime. Right, main court, ball on the beach, Nike tournament. Everybody's on the court, packed around watching, and these 12-year-olds are going into double OT, and it's just like clash. So we end up coming out ahead and winning that game by 5 points. And because the game had taken so long to end and get started, we had to wait 40 minutes for a second ref, and then they switched refs 5 minutes into the game. Just a shit show, But no disrespect to Ball on the Beach, they did a good job. It was a great tournament. Our game had been delayed an hour. So we were already scheduled to play a second game in the evening if we won. So we literally walk off the court, and 10 minutes later, we have to go to the next game.
Yeah.
So my boys just were gassed. I mean, at 12 years old, you got energy, but if another team's been sitting and they're fresh and you just played a double overtime game, it is what it is. Anyway.
Even mentally, just the mental. I mean, when the physical legs, you're not going to have the mental.
So point is, we end up not having to play on Sunday. On Sunday, we had a complete free day. The tournament's over. So we go hit the beach early. And I got about 6 boys with me from the team, and they got this banana boat rental, right? And the banana boat, you get on, and my boys are looking at the paddle boats. They're thinking it's the paddle boat. It's not. It's the banana. This is a different deal. Yeah. This is where the guy comes with the jet ski and ties the banana boat to it, and
trust me, time of your life on a banana boat.
Oh, big time fun. Big time fun. No, makes me rethink.
We clown it all the time, but
makes me rethink Chris Paul and LeBron and D-Wade and Carmelo being on the banana boat. Now I get why they were on it. It still looked a little
great time.
Still looked a little sketchy for some grown men.
Being that big too, oversized men.
Oversized men. I mean, that banana boat's lagging. It's having trouble. But
a great time.
But for 12-year-olds, it's great. And they try to get me going. I'm just like, I can't. Just on principle. I'm not getting on a banana boat. I'm not doing it.
It looks super fun, but I can't do it.
So I let them get on it. And then I rented a jet ski because they want to do the jet skis, but you got to be over 18 to ride them yourself. So I get the jet ski myself. And I've never been on a jet ski, really. I'm like, how hard could it be? It's fucking jet ski, right? It's like, can't be that hard.
Yeah.
So but I'm still looking at it kind of cautious because I don't really play the risk game like that.
Right.
I mean, I'm like,
this thing's small.
When you coach young people, it forces you to become a man in certain places where before, it just even flying down there. I hate flying. I can do it, but I hate it. Plus, Florida's like one of the furthest flights you can do from Minnesota, 3.5
in the continental U.S.
hours in the continental U.S. And so, I'm like, man, I don't want to fly. I don't have to. But it's my team. I promised them, and the commitment and whatnot. And then I had a couple boys fly with me that weren't my own. And so, it just forced you to grow up in some ways. And so I get the jet ski, long story short.
I get the jet ski.
And all the boys have finished the banana boat. So now I'm going to take the boys out one by one on the back of the jet ski. And so I take little Royce out. He's first. I take little Royce out. We just ride around about 4 or 5 minutes. They got a mile marker both ways that the boundary.
Yeah.
So I bring him back in. I get the next kid on. I bring him back in. I get the next kid on. And now we got a storm coming because it's like 2:30. But when you're down in Florida, the storms off of the beach don't really make you nervous because it happens every day.
Yeah.
Right? So we had already been down there and seen a storm come, and then 10 minutes later it was completely sunny.
Yeah. So
we see the rain off the coast, and they're like, at 2:30 we're stopping. So I'm like, all right, let me bring this last kid in and get the last one on so he can get his turn. So I'm driving out of the little ramp. They got the buoys that kind of this little launch pad for the jet skis. Which
little
way?
Runway.
Little runway, little path. Big path actually out there, but it's little compared to the beach. And I go, which way you want to go? He's like, go that way, go right. I turn right. We go all the way down the boundary. Now this is my 6th time.
Yeah.
So now I'm feeling comfortable.
I got the gist of it.
I'm comfortable on it. And we get down by the boundary, which was the next hotel. The markers were 2 hotels on each side of our resort. And I get down there, and I start to turn us to come back. And it wasn't that I was going too fast. It was that I was going too slow, because the jet ski gets rigid the more you put on the throttle. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So I slowed down, and the thing just slowly starts to turn over. And it had happened a couple times, and then it kind of just wiggled back, and it was all good. This one was going, right? And it was like slow motion, and that thing turned all the way upside down. Now, nobody told me that you can turn the jet ski back over.
Yeah, they'll just flip right back over.
Nobody told me that.
White people just know that.
Yeah,
we just know that.
Yeah, no, nobody told me. I'm thinking, so
it's done. It's lost.
So
we lost the jet ski.
no, I didn't think.
It can't be salvaged from here.
So I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, because it was still floating.
Yeah.
It was still.
Yeah,
but it was some of the older jet skis. They will take on water if they go full topside.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
They'll take on water and start to sink. But no, this one was kind of just floating. And so the kid, his name is, I won't say his name just because his parents' permission, but the kid starts to swim back to the jet ski and grab it. And my mind is going, we're about 100 yards out, 150 yards out. My mind is, this water's deep as shit.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're just hanging here. And I know they're busy back there at the beach signing people up for more jet skis, because I was just standing there. Like, I know people are there with the credit cards filling out waivers and asking about, life vests and whatnot. So I'm like, it might be 10, 15 minutes before they even realize we turned over out here. Now, we got the life vest, so it's not like we're going to drown. But how much do you really trust a life vest when you're 200 yards out? I really don't. I mean, I'm 270, and I got somebody else's kid with me. So I'm like, I don't really fucking trust these life vests either. These motherfuckers seem easy to compromise. I mean, they're not, but they just in the moment, it feels like they're easy to compromise, right?
It feels like a shark could have his way with this thing.
It feels like just a
thread might come a little loose.
A well-positioned seashell or a rock could cause an abrasion that would sink this damn life vest, right? So I tell the kid, we're swimming.
We gotta start. Don't waste any more energy. We gotta get to shore. The current is gonna be against us.
Oh, and then I kept thinking was, all I kept thinking was, if we stay here, somehow the ocean is gonna keep dragging us further out. We gotta go.
We gotta get to it.
We gotta go. And so we start
Forget
swimming.
the boat.
We start swimming, right? And I could see the fear on his face. And this kid, now
he's afraid because you're afraid.
No. He was genuinely kind of afraid, because us black people, we don't really do the water like that, especially the ocean. We're not really. It's not our cup of tea per se, right?
Yeah.
And we just kind of water. I'm a great swimmer. My son and my daughter are great swimmers because their mom really loves the water, so they're great swimmers. But you ask black men, like, we don't really like swimming like that, which is actually prudent, I think, because when you're out there in the ocean, this is what I'm saying.
I'm scared of big bodies of water.
When I was out there,
I have a phobia of
when
big
I was
bodies
out there
of
on the
water.
jet ski and it all seemed like it was fun. Ooh, it was like, this is
because you're not in the water. You're on top of the water.
As soon as that ski went over and I was in the water and my legs were kicking, I was even this how petty I am. This is how fucking childlike I am. And sometimes I try to stick my foot down. I sunk down and like tried to reach my foot to see.
Can I touch? No.
It's at least 200 feet deep right here, 100 feet deep right here, right? So.
Oh, that's scary to me even. I don't like the water like
so
that.
Look, so now I'm like, yo, we not staying here. And what I really was thinking was, you got somebody else's kid. I wouldn't let my kid go out past the buoy.
Yeah.
Just to swim.
Yeah.
Just because of sharks. I mean, why take the risk? The ocean is not that much fun to take the risk of potentially getting a limb bit off by a shark because you got too deep. Stay on the beach. You can swim and do that. If you want to swim beyond
Don't be that guy. Don't be the one who gets the 3 shark attacks a year. Don't be that one.
Don't be that guy who ruins everybody's day on the beach.
Yeah.
Even from that, you're ruining everybody else's fucking day.
Screwing it for everyone else.
Yeah, come on, dude. We're on vacation.
No
bro.
one wants to see that.
Nobody wants to see you.
I would be traumatized if I saw someone I don't even know get their leg bit off by a shark.
Nobody wants to see the gristle in your kneecap. You know what I mean? It's just that's just disturbing. Everybody's scarred now. We'd never be able to get over it. So not want to
never be able to get over.
Yeah, now you can't. Come on. You see a guy's leg taking off. They dragging him ashore, and he's in shock because a shark just took his leg. That's not. You don't get over that. Okay, so I'm out here, open water, right? I tell the kid, we got to swim. We're swimming. We're going. So we start swimming. And the optical illusion is crazy because it's really hard to tell if you're getting into shore because the body of water's so big and it's so far. It's hard to tell if I'm even getting closer.
And you're probably fading in and out of consciousness at this point because of your own fear.
No, I wasn't.
Where's
I
the
was,
shore?
dude, my martial arts training, my training in martial arts and Thai and wrestling and just everything just honed in. Because the fear was real. And again, it wasn't that we were going to drown necessarily. It was like, I'm out here in open water, way past the buoy, way far from shore with somebody else's kid. I can see this going wrong. I'm going to avoid the whole thing. We're going to swim in. And so he's following me. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, just follow me. Just follow me. It's going to be all right. We're going to swim in. And I can see him kind of nervous, right? And I'm standing a little bit in front of him to motivate him to swim towards me.
Yeah.
And this is this part touched my heart. Me and this kid are bonded for life from this, right? He asked me, this is a kid who's physically, he's probably the strongest kid on the team.
Yeah.
Fastest, most athletic, cut, ripped, jacked up already as a sixth grader. And he's a little mannish, right? He's got a cell phone, he's got his friends, the little girls, he might be text messaging or whatever on his cell phone. So he's mannish, right? And he said to me in the most boyish voice, Coach, can you grab me? Coach, will you grab me? And I told him, I said, no. Because, if you grab each other, you can submerge those life vests easy. I said, no, if you need a break, if you're tired, just float for a second, and then we'll start again. I said, you're going to float. You're fine. Not going to grab you, but you're fine. So I stay in front of him. We start swimming again. We're swimming. Finally, I see a buoy over my shoulder, a little white buoy. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to keep swimming for another minute, and if I get past this buoy or get closer to it, then at least I'll know I'm going towards shore. I'm moving the right way. And sure enough, I did, right? And we were moving the right way. We swam all the way into land until we could stand in the water again.
Yeah.
It must have been a 10-minute swim.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time.
It's tiring.
And by the time we got to the place where we could stand again, the people from the jet ski place were just now getting to the jet ski turned over out there 150 yards out.
Yeah.
And they pull up and they're looking around like, where are our riders?
Yeah.
Which would let me know I made the right decision because we had been hanging out there for, 10, 15 minutes, whatever. It don't matter. I didn't know. It could have been 30. I don't trust the jerk-offs that rent the jet skis.
Right.
They're jerk-offs too, you know what I mean? So, but I'm waving. I'm like, no, we're in the shore already. So they come, bring us a jet ski. We ride back real nice and slow to the... I tell the whole story for this reason.
People aren't in shape.
People are not in shape.
They can't.
I know they're not in shape because I am one of the strong... If you take 10 people on the street...
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I'm going to be one of the strongest people out of 10 people.
Yeah.
Okay? That swim was hard for me.
Yeah.
Just a 150-yard swim from deep water into shore. I was tired. And I had the strongest fucking sixth grader in the state of Minnesota with me with a life vest. He's the strongest kid his age. You get 3 fat kids out there in the water and 3 fat adults, these fuckers might drown each other out there panicking. Okay? I mean, people are not in good physical fitness. And I tell the whole story to say, I don't think people really are ready for that, what the level of physical fitness and mental fitness it takes to be engaged in full spectrum combat like that, conflict.
Right.
They don't have that.
Agreed. And that's why throughout history, whoever fought was a portion of the society. And now, all of a sudden in modern America, we're having to think like, it could be any of us.
Everybody.
Any of us might have to be able to. So, I mean, that's abnormal historically, and we have the sort of reason why. But because you were kind of circling back to say that they won't press the levers on the Trump thing because, well, it also goes that way. The people that will get mad about it won't have the capacity to mount any sort of meaningful, revolt against them. I will also point out this. I think one thing that's missing from your understanding of the motivations for evil. Now, I know you know this, but I think you didn't apply it here, is that people enjoy, there's a greater pleasure that comes through physically asserting yourself, dominating someone else, than the idea, but then right when you get to the precipice, backing off of it. Being like, oh, I don't want that. Like, for them, it'll give them more of a rush to go, yeah, let's slap this sentence on you. right? Let's punk. Seriously, that's the psychology behind any numbers
No, I get it,
of beatdowns, murders, rapes. You run the gamut, domestic abuse. Like, that's the psychology behind it, is that the forcing a person against their will is more thrilling, more exhilarating for the person doing it. The reason is it creates a greater sense of pleasure because it's a greater demonstration of power, and power is the ability to get things to happen the way you want them to happen.
Right.
So to someone who's pushing back against you, to force them to do it is going to affirm your power in a greater way, and the pleasure is going to correspond with that. The greater pleasure is going to correspond with that. That's why people will.
So you're saying they may try it even if they back off it afterward.
Because, well, no, I where you were saying they might get up to the edge and then back off because they're not really about that. I would say they might get to that edge and then tip over into the next place just because they don't know how to regulate their own desire for pleasure.
But my point is that if you look at it across a wide enough span of time in American history, as long as this game's been on for them to encroach on freedom and the American citizenship, American rights, why didn't they just go already?
Well, I would say first off,
why have they been waiting this long?
I don't think it's always.
They could have went after 9/11. They could have went during the 80s when the drug thing got out of control. They could have. There's so many times that they could have used the social circumstance to justify full-blown tyranny. Why didn't they just go?
I would think the more accurate view of it is they probably did try at each of those iterations, and it doesn't take. So I think they might try at this iteration. It might not take. I'm not saying that it'll work. I'm saying they're going to keep trying. I don't think it's that they're going, let's just, save the thing in the back pocket. We've talked about this. When it comes to people being, active, voicing, speaking out against things, not everyone has the same microphone.
Right.
You might have a lot of good ideas.
Right.
You or I might have way better ideas than someone who has a way bigger microphone. Right. Right. So part of it is circumstance. So I think when you look at this, it's more likely the read is more likely that they try at each of those iterations. They try in the 80s. They try in the 90s. They try after 9/11. They try here, a few years ago. They're going to try now with Trump. And they're just waiting to see which one takes. Because the impulse is that sort of revolutionary impulse. Right? And that's where I think if you're looking at this next iteration that Trump saga was coming 2024 election, I think they're going to try it again. I don't think they have the restraint or the desire to restrain that attempt. I think that attempt is there's too much of a craving for it from their own perspective. Like, man, that would be, it's not just that would, I think whether it thwarts the Republican Party is second to the joy and pleasure they would get getting to do that to people. Getting to evoke that sort of
they do show
craziness
that
and fear, in
manic,
people. Yeah,
they got that manic energy about them.
Yeah. Just like poking someone until they react. That I think will be enticing enough to them. The rhetoric that they've used around conservatives, MAGA Republicans for 60 years. When people talk about rhetoric leads to things, you want Exhibit A. Look at the rhetoric they've used publicly in the desensitizing of the conservative individual over the last 60 years. This has been a slow process that has built to something that, yes, it's taken on a different form than the social economic Marxism of the past. Now it's in this weird, ambiguous, amorphous state where they can really get away with saying anything to someone that is in that camp. Right? There's really no level where they go, well, that's too dehumanizing to conservatives. There's not any level toward, white people toward conservatives where they'd be like, well, that's beyond the pale. So you've only seen it ratchet up. People who do that, they enjoy watching the other person squirm. And I think there will be a desire, a drawing them toward pushing that button.
Okay, well, as a Catholic, as a Christian, as a theology teacher, would you say that your good friend across the table is justified in my disproportionate vulgarity in response to such criticism and attack or blatant provocation from these types of people? Because I see part of the problem with the conservative movement. I'll say this: part of the problem with the conservative movement is we know we're being provoked, we know we're being poked and prodded, we know we're being and I'm not saying to respond and react to every little thing. But why are we so passive? Yeah, I mean, we're just tell these people to fuck off. Just tell him, go fuck yourself, buddy. But we won't do that. We'll like try and do we actually argue and debate back with them as though it's legitimate. And my point is, like our guy, Rise of the Fourth Political Theory, Dugan, Alexander Dugan, as he would say, the reason for that is because the conservatism is just another form of liberalism, right? And that the conservatives, all of the worst parts about the liberals, all of the worst parts about liberalism, in large part, in many ways, is something that the conservatives agree upon, the way things should be. Because if not, I mean, you're not going to let people, they're invested in the status quo. The conservatives, they're invested in the thing running the way it has been. The boomers, mainly the boomers, and certainly the 501c, here we call them the 501c3 Christians and the 401k boomers. They're all invested in the things going back to normal. They just reject how crazy the liberals have gotten with it.
Yeah.
They were like, no, everybody was kind of keeping to themselves. We had an unspoken agreement that the corruption was going to continue. Now you're basically pulling the veil off the whole thing when you go and say men can cut off their penis and become a woman. What are you doing? We had it good. We were getting the golden shekels. We're rich. Why are you changing it? Yeah. So that's there. And then they say, well, I'm not going to respond because, don't throw pearls to, pearls to the swine.
Yep.
And turn the other cheek, and it's not Christ-like. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, all of those things may be true, but your lack of response doesn't have anything to do with any of that. Yeah, you don't want to have to really call the shit out.
Right. So, I mean, you asked me, right, would I be justified to do this? And of course, the run-of-the-mill Christian response is, well, I'm not going to say what's justified, what's not. I think you're asking me earnestly to try and make a moral appraisal of what's going on. So I think it's responsible, it's incumbent on me, at least in some semblance of courage, to try and give an answer to that.
Well, not just to me. Well, you can for me too, but just for the average American out there who's faced with this type of landscape where we're being provoked systematically by the establishment on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would say two thoughts come to mind. First, we have the matter as it is said straight up. Okay, if they're provoking you injustice, can we respond back to that? And that resolves pretty clearly that you have the right to push back, and you have a leeway in how you push back due to the sort of triggering effect of the first one. Even a sort of disproportion in response can fall within the realm of sort of appropriate response back in one having the right to sort of defend not just their own body, but their ideals and the things that the values that they want to be forming the community in which they live in, right? So that's on the surface. I think the other thought that comes to mind to me, though, is that Europeans would always call the Russians like the baby cousins of Europe. Like they were like the newbies, because Russian society's 600, 700 years old, 600 years old, the Russian Empire, sort of 600 years old. And Europe, it goes deep, right? There's the continuum even to the sort of Roman Empire. So its roots go deep, right? That's when we talk about the Chinese Empire.
The Romans, the Greeks.
Roots go real deep in the Chinese Empire. Okay. America is the baby cousin of Russia with how new we are. I think what you see with us, so you say, for me to respond like this, what you see in these other societies and why the Europeans would point them and go, you guys are Russia's the baby cousin, is because they go, it's not that you're overreacting, it's that you're in the first layer of reaction, which is really overt and shows itself. And then the second layer sort of refrains back from it. It starts to take a scope of the landscape, right? It starts to try and orient itself. It's like, okay, and I need to get a lot of ducks in a row, figure this out. Then in the sort of the third phase, that deeper phase, now you're sort of starting to apply those things. You're playing on that and you're just enduring it, right? America, we are the babies of the babies. It's like, and maybe it's fitting that we have to go through those phases. But for us, you do have some people who are like, well, we should be in the third phase. We're not. We're young, and even from the Declaration, when the United States was 3 million people, really we can look at from the time that our country was about 200 million people strong, really kind of post World War II. That's about the age of this country as we know it today. About 75, 80, 90, 100 years. Okay, we're a young nation, and so the place we would want to get to is the place of taking the scope of the landscape and of trying to move the things to bring about the end that you want. This actually circles all the way back to Ramaswamy, right? He says the left is operational. They have their end in mind. The thing for the right is he says we need first principles and moral. Okay, he may be great at economic principles, but the real question is, what are the principles that undergird whatever political principles we're going after? What are the worldview principles? And this doesn't have to be 1,000 things. It's, do you see yourself as deferring to God, right? In how you think about things and how you act in things and how you organize things. Is that central to, and will you fight for that? And if you'll fight for that, now you might begin to have the composure to go, sometimes it'd be like a good fighter. Sometimes I got to give the superficial jabs back. Sometimes I got to plot for the big attack. Sometimes I plot for the big attack and I realize it gets thwarted mid execution, and now I have to come back to the superficial so that I can now reposition, right? You don't necessarily have a blueprint for how the win is going to come about.
Right.
You have to be ready to mix and match light blows, deep blows, kill shots, and come to them as you can as the opportunity arises. So I think that the eventual place for American people of goodwill, free people of the world, is to say, okay, what's that goal, and how do we now have to interact with it? And you're going to have to mix and match, and different people's temperaments are going to mix and match in different ways. So I think the point blank answer is like, am I justified in responding back with hostility, animosity? Well, yeah, because that's the sign that you're not going for that,
right? And
you have the right to do it. In the same way, same way, they even have a natural right. They have a natural right. Now, it's not bound, right? It's not. This goes back to the beginning of our conversation. It's not bound in heaven by the eternal law, but they have a sort of natural right to want to defend the things they're going toward.
Except for the fact that the things that they're going for aren't natural themselves.
Correct. That's my point. That's my point. That's why there's no binding. There's no binding on it.
If there's a case to be made that you abnegate your natural rights, it's if the thing you're going for is super unnatural.
Yes. I
mean, you can't claim to have natural rights and be fixated on unnatural ambition.
Yeah.
That's a contradiction of the highest order.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be like Satan being down there, like, where are my rights?
Yeah. I mean, come on.
You abnegated them.
You abnegated them, obviously, right? And, for me, it's just, I go back to the most...
And by the way, they're still retained. It's just actually you think your rights are something that they're not. So even that natural person, right? God is still giving them the grace to keep their being in existence,
right?
Which he could snatch from them, and he'd have every right to do. So he's even giving them a sort of privilege along the way, but claims over society, over morals, they don't have them. They don't have any natural rights toward that at that point once they've abnegated what's actually natural. But yeah, I mean, any person will at least testify to that reality, that visceral reality, that if something is under threat, there's some sort of response baked into me to push back against it. And so, again, probably Protestant Catholic distinction here too, but what is of the body as it is made is good. Now, due to original sin, it has this corruption, but the body is central. That's not a Catholic thing. That's a biblical thing, right? Adam and Eve are in the garden, right? The first humans have these bodies. This body is a central piece of what we are. And at the end of time, right? Christ, when he resurrects, his body resurrects. His whole body is transformed. At the end of time, you have the resurrection of all matter, right? The glorification of all matter, right? So the body, the material realm, is central to the Christian worldview, not just the Catholic worldview. Yes, we have St. Paul who says, my flesh is at war with my spirit. Yeah, he's speaking to the sort of practical dynamic of it now due to sin, fallen nature, that these things contest with each other.
Yeah.
But the actual, the reconciliation we're getting through Christ is the reunification of the body and spirit, not here in this life, which Paul also says, not here in this life, but in the next life, right? Yeah. In the end of times, okay? And so, again, that's where we look at that. We look at that landscape. We can start to actually sort those things out. Our body has a natural reaction to being imposed upon. Okay, there's something in that says, okay, well, there's a sort of obvious justice to be able to say, no, I'm not going for it.
And my point is to bring that up is in the same way that I respond in a sort of off the cuff, shoot from the hip kind of way. I think is reflective in a lot of the criticism around Donald Trump as well. And yes, some of it you could say is, hey, he's being immature for a president, or he's too sensitive or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, sure, maybe, but who are you to make that moral claim? I always love when Farrakhan tells the guy in the talk show, he's Donahue, I think it was, and he goes, who are you to be the moral claim of Uganda as an American?
Yeah.
Uganda's 35-year-old nation. You got a 200-year-old nation with more blood than Uganda could even hope to conjure up or amount to, or what, who are you to be the moral authority about Uganda, right? To say, yeah, they got corruption. Yeah, they got a lot of misuse of resources and abuse, but why are you saying it? And see, when people talk in the public sphere, we kind of lose sight of the motive of the person saying the thing, and we just get wrapped up in the thing that's said.
Right. People
aren't always who they purport themselves to be. So I'm not saying Donald Trump doesn't have flaws. I'm not saying that he couldn't go about it in a better way. There's probably a better way for all of us to go about it. What I'm saying is his critics aren't really, their rejection of him isn't about the flaws. Yeah. And they show that in the way they go about the thing they go about.
What conservative president of the last 70 years has most pushed back against a sort of materialistic economic ethic?
It's not even close.
Donald Trump. It's not even close.
It's not even close.
So I don't even care about geopolitics or social. Just that alone, and saying that, no, we won't do trades with whoever for no reason. That alone is a redeeming quality in Trump that we haven't seen in another conservative president in the last 70 years.
Not Nixon.
Not Reagan.
Certainly not the Bushes. Yeah.
So here's my point. Like, when you look at, there are things that Donald Trump, when he said, no, you know what, actually, I'm going to throw out the status quo that just takes for granted that you can do whatever so long as the economics, are good, long as the material stuff is good.
As long as the books get squared.
That right there spoke for the conservative ethos more adamantly than any of the I would say presidents, period, of the last 70 years.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's where I always say, if you're looking at Trump, what he has going that the other people don't have going is, if you get down to those core things of what it means to be conservative, and I always make this point, we've made it the point on the show, the conservative is not conserving what came before them. This is one, this is the British conservatives, which is, wine society conservatives, which is in vogue here in America.
Yeah, they were just trying to conserve.
They think
the business model.
Yeah, their claim is that conservatives try and conserve, and so they go, eventually liberals will transform to conservatives because they'll want to conserve what they've now established. No, conservatism tries to conserve the perennial values that prove true across time. Yeah. It's not the conserving of the status quo, which is always sort of by definition, the status quo is the deformation. It's not like, well, if the status quo becomes in line with the perennial values, then it's a status quo. No, the status quo is a pejorative for the way man in their fallen nature distorts those perennial values. So Amen. Conservatism is trying to preserve what would be good across time, what values hold across time, and that's what they're fighting to conserve and renew, right? My whole point is that if you start to lay out, okay, so what are some of those things, right? It's materialism is ordained toward the dignity of the person and the communities that live within it. So no, we're not just selling out to China. And you could substitute in whatever other nation you wanted in theory. A conservative value doesn't go for selling out. A conservative value goes for the sort of, we could say, the psychological reality that relationship formation plays in a community, and that the parameters you set on it. So that's the sort of socially conservative, right? But in a very fundamental way, it goes for that. Okay, if we now we sort of look at domestic economics, we look at sort of military again. A conservative one would be that a military has to have a purpose for what it's doing. It's not just expand into infinity.
Yeah.
Okay. Donald Trump did more to dismantle that than anyone else. Now, he didn't do that much, and part of that is because it's not meant to only be him, right? if it's a movement, right? If it's conserving perennial values, you have people that become a part of it. He relied
on a lot of. He was looking to a lot of people, and he relied on a lot of people that end up folded in the mainstream media. They used those people who folded as a sign of his illegitimacy. That, well, if the people on Donald Trump's own side are turning their back on him, there must be something wrong with what he's saying.
Yeah.
Or there could be something wrong with those people's motives.
Right.
That they were never really in it to really change the status quo. And overwhelmingly, we see that a broad majority of people aren't usually invested in changing the status quo. And any figure that can galvanize grassroots momentum to influence big groups of people to change the status quo, those are the people that you got to kill. And to my point about the
but this is why leadership matters, is because if you get layers of leadership, it's not about everyone being great, but if you get layers of leadership, and we're not just talking but politically in institutions, now you do start to have a healthier society because you get closer to those perennial values, right? So, okay, let me quick finish this up, right? We have the economic motive, we have the sort of social conservative, we have the sort of geopolitical, military, industrial one, right? Conservatism Trump didn't do that great in social things, didn't do that great. I mean, he had the right energy toward the geopolitical things, didn't accomplish that much. Here at home, right, economically is probably the area where he had the biggest impact, just the ethos of it. And then here's the other one. Here's a thread that we can see that overarches all of these. A perennial principle is that truth is good. Well, what is truth? Truth is honesty. It actually has two forms. We say God has perfect veracity and perfect fidelity. So what that means is that what he thinks and what he says are in perfect alignment, and what he says and what he does are in perfect alignment. So God has no error, no falsehood in him. Perfect veracity between what he thinks and what he says, and perfect fidelity between what he says and what he does. Okay, those are principles that God has in supreme perfection. Okay, what has most gone wrong in our society? It's the connection between what people think and what they say and what they do. And Trump leveled an assault to try and expose that more than any other president of the last 100 years, maybe of the American entire time, the American nation's history, right? Now, it also happens to be that he lives at a time where it's sort of taken on a more crystallized deformity. So maybe it wouldn't have been, we maybe wouldn't have seen it in as stark a way. So part of that's just sort of providential of the timing that he's here. But you look at Trump, where he did well is opposing the materialistic ethic in economics. Where he did well was at least starting the conversation around interventionism and geopolitics. Where he did well socially, again, socially,
it was calling out the media.
Yeah, socially, but I mean in the social, in the family fabric, right? So he helps with abortion, but in this one, really, he's pretty weak in part because he's kind of afraid to tread into that water, and part of that is a psyop because they go, well, you're not moral, so you can't talk about that. Hold on, that's gotta stop right there. You can understand something, right? A human mind can have reason, so he needs to be encouraged to go, no, just go into it, lean into it, whatever faults you have. Guess what? Other than Christ, up there, maybe St. Paul, but the other person, most moral person, right? Most David, right? David, his Psalms, right? Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, even Solomon, 700 wives, 300 mistresses. He's sleeping with everyone and their mamas. Yeah. Right? And so, again, and he gives us Proverbs. Okay, so my point is hopefully encourage him to say, no, you can even take it forward. But this is probably his weaker area in principle, was a sort of social fabric ties. But then that axis of truth, that veracity and fidelity, he took a sledgehammer to it. And so when we look at the field of candidates and we say, okay, conservatism is trying to preserve those values, we'll say in those four spheres, the immediate social, right, economic, okay, geopolitical, and then the sort of overall social. We have the immediate social, the big picture social. Who has been the best at preserving those things or at trying to bring them forward?
It's not even close.
It's not even close. What's interesting about a Ramaswamy is actually an idea. He starts to add something that's of value, right? He's starting to clarify some things. But that access of, veracity, fidelity, Is he ready for that war? Again, I have my doubts. You know, we always use the Joker reference.
The squealer.
I know a squealer when I see one.
I know a squealer when I see one.
You know, and
Batman will find him and he will make him talk.
Batman will find him.
Yes.
And he will make him talk. Right.
Yes.
So that's the worry. But again,
it's not a knock on Vivek out there.
I don't want to.
I'm not trying to denigrate you.
Yeah. If this got around him, I don't want to discourage him. I want to encourage the good things that he's doing. I want to encourage him to and God willing, that he received the grace when those sufferings come, that even if unprepared, that he received the grace in those moments to take it on. I hope for that. I like a lot of what he's doing, but again, the energy with Trump is just way different. The energy is way different. That's where, again, DeSantis,
the funny thing about it is, and I know this myself from my own journey, many people, much smaller group of people, obviously, than Donald Trump, but within my own, network of connectivity, any of those people out there who have followed me and been following my story since I was 21 years old and, whose lives I've impacted in whatever way I have, a lot of times the person who's at the center of an energy like that, that's so providential, doesn't even really realize it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just you. Yeah. You're living.
Trump's just him.
He's just him, right? And so that's where I can look at him and some of the things he maybe should have done, didn't do, made a mistake on, whatever the case may be. Yeah. Even just his general personality. I can look at him and sort of detach him from the providence that he represents in the conversation. I mean, I'm able to do that because it's like, he's not superhuman. None of us are supernatural. He has a set of principles, and even take the principles out of it. Let's just grant that this entire thing from Donald Trump isn't some deep philosophical understanding of the time and the issues and where he's going to stand and plant a flag. Let's assume that he doesn't have some great advisors around him that do have this rich, moral, intrinsic sort of feel of the world. Even
that can be a barrier. Some of it you have to be able to shoot from the hip. I've never met a good. This is the difference between a good athlete and other people when they talk in this space. Because pretty much everyone who's talking in this space lacks it. It's actually one of the reasons why my favorite show to watch is Fearless. Yeah. It's the energy. It's a gang of Protestants. Yeah. But I like the energy of it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You and I obviously we have, but it's like, it's different when you're someone who will take the last shot. This is why I don't like LeBron. I could care less if he was, the conservative champion of values, the perennial thing, whatever. Like,
he won't take the last shot. You don't like that?
I don't like that. I mean, I will be, you know me, I'll play in the Pro-Am and take, I have no business shooting this ball, but I'm like, that's what we're doing. We're riding with it. And you might dislike, but this is what I do. Shoot or shoot. And so there has to be some piece of a person that goes, I'm sorry. I don't, it's not even, Trump doesn't need all the philosophical things aired out. He needs to shoot. Now let me pose this to you and the listeners. Don't forget too, that God has a claim on every person in this world. All right. And I want to close it out throwing this one at you guys to seriously consider. This is when I read the saints, this is how they consider things. This is the lens. This is how they flip their worldview to consider things. Do we think that Trump has a deep Christian faith? I think the answer is pretty clear. No, right? Mm-hmm. We don't think that about Trump. Could it be that these trials coming to him at the end of his life are God's claim to bring him the sufferings that he might convert, that he might truly have that faith take root deeply, right? Be it political persecution, of course. Be it handcuffed from even entry into this, whatever
exactly
it is.
How it would happen.
This is my point. If we start to consider that, we can go, no, God actually may be saying, Trump, now's my time to call you to me. And even though you don't know it as you're walking into it, this could be something where God is saying, hey, I'm pulling you to me, because that is, right? That's where they get right. That is the personalness of God, that he desires each one in that way. That he goes, yeah, you might think that this is bad, but I'm going to strip you of all those things and start to prepare you to put on that white robe and come into my heavenly banquet. Now, I don't know that he is. I pray for him. I pray for Rachel. I pray for liberals that comes their way, right? That's one of the spiritual works of mercy, praying for the living and the dead, right? One of the 7 spiritual works of mercy. right? A saint should desire to see a person come into their glorified nature. You don't have to worry about, oh, I don't like that person. If they're glorified, then they have repentance, then they have charity, they have unity with God, union with God, right? They have all those good things that would immediately be beautiful to you, right? So it's not me saying, Trump, let's beatify Trump right now. I'm saying God might be, and this is the way God works. So let's seriously consider maybe drawing him in to his process of crowning him and bringing him home. Because as you've pointed out, he's not meant to be the savior for us. He's not meant to be the political savior. It is a sequence of people, right? Yes. His torch, maybe there's more to add to it. Okay, that's in play too, right? That's in play too. But it may be, okay, boom, now there's the next iteration, and then the next iteration, and the next iteration. And without the sequence, the sequence of iterations, you're not going to see that sort of transformation, even in nooks and crannies. I think that's the real telltale sign of our time these days, is that in the nooks and crannies, a lot of the good is gone from it. A lot of that hope and faith is really struggling. And so we could still have a sort of wicked world where renewals of that in really sort of significant amounts are taking place. And by significant, I mean, significant portions spanning large groups of people, cultures, things like that. Yeah. And so I think, again, the answer is, if Trump has another run at it, good, because if we look at those 4 categories of conservatism, he is the best one right now to attack the core of those things. And let's hope that where he's weak, he strengthens it and does the same thing he does, which is go after things courageously. And if he's off the stage, we need people to do that, because what have we learned from Republican presidents over the last 70 years? One of them had that out of 6 or whatever, one of them. So it could be another 6 presidents, Republican presidents, before we get back to that one. But those people, this is how history works. This is how salvation history works.
I don't think
these
America,
movers make changes. They shift things.
I don't think America lasts another six presidencies without some huge changes. And that's the other,
he gave us David and Solomon, so he might hit them
back to back.
He might.
My thing is this. Okay. With all the Catholics and Protestants and Christians out there, even let's extend to the Jews and the Muslims
absolutely.
and the providence. It's not, their view of it is that America's Babylon and that America is destined to fail. I have a completely opposite view. I think the trajectory of mankind is intrinsically tied to America's destiny in many ways. I mean, there's never been, if there's
I
one
probably
thing,
wouldn't say intrinsically tied, but I mean, I follow what you're saying.
It's significant.
Sort of turn of phrase.
It's significant. My point is, the one thing you can say about America, people say, well, this is the greatest country on earth. And I look at people when they say that and go, no. If by comparison, I mean, if you say you're good or bad by comparison, then I guess you could make the claim. But the one thing that does distinguish America is that God's constituted in America, in America's founding documents, the role of God. The role of God and the relationship between God and man and rights. I mean, there's something divine about the American Constitution, in my opinion.
Justice Scalia made this point in an interview, I don't know, a decade and a half ago, but I always thought it was a good one. He goes, it's not the Constitution that makes America different from the other ones. He goes, if you go read the Soviet Constitution, he goes, beautiful document. All the rights, they're all that you get them all. It's perfect. They don't execute in line with it. I don't think the distinction is our Constitution. There was something in the ethos of the people and of the trajectory and the sort of providential timing of these things that makes it a significant mark, a significant node, shall we say. But, this is where I would say, I mean, I don't think that the destiny of man is intrinsically tied to America's reality or flourishing, but I do think it's been a piece of it, and I am not one to say that it's done or that it's been exhausted. I think if people sit there and they say, it's the fact that we have ideals and that's what makes us different. Every nation has ideals.
Yeah, that's a misconception.
When they go, I mean, frankly,
but
frankly, if we took the Bill of Rights,
but at the same time, though, you do have to realize that the American version of freedom, what freedom has come to represent on the world stage, is embodied by the American identity.
Yeah.
Everybody aspires to be free as a juxtaposition from their government and their circumstance and their country to American. Now, it gets watered down, it gets bastardized, it gets corrupted when people talk about American culture, which is really a radical materialism that was put on top of our founding. Well, it wasn't put on top. It came in the founding documents, kind of came through the keyhole, and then they just slapped the business model on top and kept moving forward. But regardless, our concept of freedom and the relationship of being free for humans with relationship to God is something that America has shown a significance in, even when it's been corrupted, even though the globalists and the people who have used the American identity to sort of justify all of their corruption around the world and use freedom, the people around the world accepted this because they clung to this root idea of freedom. And I know they wrapped it and said democracy, but it's not really democracy that people are so invested in. It's the idea of being a free person, of being a free citizen.
I think what America most represents in line with that is it represents the idea of having a new frontier while having some technical and knowledge prowess, right? Sort of intellectual prowess. When these people came to this new frontier land, they came equipped with boats that were able to get them there, sort of understandings of things broad enough to be able to employ a sort of harnessing of that land rather rapidly. And I think what America represents historically is that combination showed forth sort of dignity in people that was quite splendid, quite beautiful. Now, of course, with major flaws in it, be it from slavery or whatever it would be, right? I mean, like major character flaws or defects there with it. And that's part of why I just say, no, I don't think America is the shining beacon on the hill. I mean, that's the New Jerusalem, right? Actually, that's, if you really want to get technical, that's the church. That's the Catholic Church, right? That's the shining beacon on the hill,
right.
Be it with whatever corruption, right? You talk about how our values sort of show through even amidst the corruption in America. Look at the church for 2,000 years, and everyone knows the list of sins that the people in it have done, right? They might not know, we always joke about it. People, me and a couple priest friends of mine, people might not know much of the Bible at all, but they can quote you chapter and verse of the lines that they disagree with, right? It's the same thing with the church. They might not know much about it, but they can tell you all the faults of the church along the way. So take that list and now look at what this thing is a vehicle of and how's it even still here, right? And all these things. The beauty, all the things, years. Right? The beauty, the depth, the breadth of it. It is one of those visible signs of its sort of truth. In the same way Christ performed miracles, he didn't have to perform miracles. He did them because they're these visible signs that just sort of prove it. He didn't have to prove it. He didn't have to prove it to any of you guys, right? He didn't have to do any of it. Yeah. And whoever I talk to my students, when he raises Lazarus from the dead, Lazarus still dies after that.
Yeah.
Right? So he didn't have to do that. It's not like, could have just cut to the chase. But he says why he does it. He says it's for you that you might know the glory of God. Right? That's what it's for. So even that, he gives signs to prove it for people because it's a very visceral way that people relate to it. But so my point is that I think America, if you look at the greatness of it, there are some things that are very profound in it. And I think it really, like you said, it's sort of in a general way, it spoke to the dignity of people given, just a sort of not an overwhelming. I don't think we have to look at them and go, well, the Americans were the most moral people ever, and that's why they did it.
Yeah, no.
You go, no, they were pretty normally moral, and had pretty good understanding, and pretty good technical know-how. They had family units that were pretty strong, partly because of what they're tested through, having to travel an ocean to come to it. That alone is a sort of cauldron for tightening down sort of family bonds, right? These things. Okay, so they kind of had that sort of standard morality with sort of some technical skill know-how, and look at what comes of it. And that, I think, made a mark on the world. And And I think the other thing it's doing is it's bringing English to the forefront, right? Where now you kind of have a way where people can actually communicate, because a lot of people learn English. It's not that we need one language, but now, all right, now you're getting to these things. I think what will be interesting is what we still need to see is when man has a lot of technical capability, what comes about. If you're wondering what Babylon might be, Babylon might be AI in the technological
no doubt it is
sphere.
No doubt.
Right? That might be the thing where it's like
no doubt.
God has set up for us to see the magnificent downfall.
It's not America.
Yeah, the magnificent downfall of that apparatus.
America's gonna be a pimple on an elephant's ass when it comes to the scope of distortion and just straight up debauchery and just mania when AI takes root. And first of all, you and I said this, you said this too, and I tend to agree with you. I don't think it will work as well as they think it will. And for the people who defect and who won't take to the plug in the back, they'll just kill them. They'll just shoot them because everybody around them will be plugged in, to some program or whatever they're going to do. I mean, it's going to get wild. It's already wild. It's already way off the charts.
No, and that's where I think it's that apparatus. We're going to see America gave us encouragement of what people could do with a normal amount of sort of morality, with its flaws, and with some technical know-how. What we're now really going to see in this next iteration of human history, I would suggest, is we're now going to see what happens to people with not just some amount of technical skill, but a large, vast amount, and how crazy does it get? Because God will correct it. I don't think we have the same. That's the thing about the American story. It's just kind of hopeful. It's like, right? It's kind of like, I mean, even other cultures all sort of use it as an idea. Like, if we could find a land and then settle it and start anew. I mean, that's the American ethos. They don't even view it through the historical lens of getting that land, because they view it through the American lens of that bit of technology that they would be able to apply to it, right? And so that's where it makes a mark on it. But I mean, I think this next iteration in human history will be, what about with a lot of technology? Does that actually undermine that sort of modicum of morality?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think
I would say,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and so.
The great AJ Barker. Yeah. Thanks for coming in and stopping in today. It was great. It was a pleasure to have you back. Always an honor. I hope everybody out there follows your Substack.
Yeah.
Make sure to go and follow AJ Barker's Substack. There's a wealth of knowledge and insight there as well. Please continue to listen to the podcast, like and subscribe. We got the Last Renaissance podcast coming soon. Be once a week, hopefully once a week for about an hour with just AJ Barker and I, as well as Hebrews, myself and Professor Penn. And we got some other podcasts coming as well. I think I'm going to be doing the Royce White Show starting here on Saturday nights, which is going to be prime time Saturday nights. So we got a number of projects and ventures. Make sure to tune in to the Big Three this weekend on Sunday, CBS. I think the games that aren't on CBS are on YouTube. I'm probably not on CBS because I say controversial shit like Trump is innocent, right on the side of my head, just kind of wacky like that. But make sure you follow the Big Three anyway. It's a good homegrown and owned league by none other than Ice Cube, who is a rebellion against this sort of broader corporatocracy and sports elitist world, at least on the sports side of things. So that should be fun as well. And as far as Trump goes, we continue to pray for him and his family during this crazy time, and hope that our Supreme Court justices will, when the time comes, when they're called to do so, rule the right way and these crazy kangaroo court indictments. And if not, Donald Trump should have to go to prison. That all of you should write Donald Trump's name in on the ballot, and that would be a lightning rod of political activation and grassroots momentum for whatever future America still has left. With that being said, the fight continues. Don't die jerk off. Godspeed.
Yep. Thanks, brother, for having me.